right, last day of, well, not last day of factoring, I'm sorry, second to last day of factoring. So we're going to be working on factoring by grouping. So a grouping is a method of factoring when a polynomial has 4 terms or more. I say or more because it does work also with like 6 terms, 8 terms, and so on. But you're going to have to mostly deal with 4 terms. So what we're going to be doing with factoring by grouping is you're going to take the polynomial that you have with 4 terms or more, and you're going to group the first 2 terms, and you're going to group the second 2 terms. And so I kind of generally use some kind of representation showing that I'm grouping them. Some teachers refer to this as the flower box method. Because this looks kind of like a flower box with the flowers coming out of it there. So it's sometimes referred to as flower box. So you're going to factor out the GCF from the first 2 terms. So my step 1, I got 12x squared plus 2x. Those are my first 2 terms. My GCF would be 2x. And then I'm left with a 6x plus 1. Second step, you're going to factor out the GCF from the second 2 terms. So looking at the negative 30x minus 5. When you're dealing with the second set of 2 terms, if this is negative, your GCF is negative. So I'm going to take out a negative 5. And then when I divide by negative 5, I would be left with 6x plus 1. So now because these 2 things right here, after we've taken out the GCFs, since those match, that means we're doing this correctly. So what we do for our third step, is you are going to take that, and you're going to write it out in front in a parentheses. In the other parentheses are going to be the 2 GCFs. So 2x minus 5. And that ends up being your final answer there. So you want those parentheses to match, and that ends up being your first factor. Your second factor ends up being those 2 GCFs there. So let's take a look at the first example here. So again, group the first 2, group the last 2, making kind of look like flower boxes here. So my GCF between 2x squared and x would be an x. Divide by x, and I'm left with 2x plus 1. My GCF between 8x and 4 is going to be a 4. And then I'm left with 2x plus 1. My parentheses match. They both have 2x plus 1, so that's my first factor. And then my GCFs are my second factor. So that ends up being our final answer there. So second example, again, I'm going to group the first 2, group the last 2. GCF between the first 2 is 2x. So then I've got an x minus 7. GCF here is a 4, so then I've got x minus 7. Again, my 2 parentheses match, so that's my first factor. 2x plus 4 is my second factor. Okay, next example. Grouping, group my first 2, group my last 2. GCF of my first 2 would be a 5x. Divide by that 5x, and I get 3x plus 1. Looking at my second 2 terms, that 3x and the 1, they really don't have anything in common other than the number 1. So that's what I'm going to use, and that's going to stay as 3x plus 1. So if there isn't a GCF from what you can find, it's going to be the number 1. So now my parentheses match. So my first factor is 3x plus 1. Second factor is 5x plus 1. Fourth example. Group my first 2, group my last 2. GCF of the first 2 would be 2x squared. So now I'm left with x minus 8. GCF of the last two will be 10. So then I got my x minus 8. So x minus 8 times 2x squared plus 10. All right, group the first two, group the last two. Again, 4 terms, group them, group them. Let's see here, 2x squared. So I got 3x minus 8. 21 and 56, going to be a 7. So then I got 3x minus 8. Parentheses match, that's your first factor. GCFs are your second factor. All right. X squared is my GCF, so I get x minus 9. Then 6 is my GCF, so I get x minus 9. So x minus 9 times x squared plus 6. So at this point, I want you to pause the video, try some of the next practice problems, see if you get it. Check with Mrs. Pelkey. Then we'll go on to our last kind for today. So we did factoring with trinomials where a equaled 1. Now we're going to do it when your a is greater than 1. So it's going to be like a 2x squared or a 3x squared or whatever have you. So the way we do this is we're going to take our trinomial and we're going to kind of end up splitting the difference is the way I call it, or many people call it, splitting the middle. I shouldn't say difference. I said difference because I saw this subtraction sign. It's not always a subtraction sign. Sometimes it's an addition sign. So when we're splitting the middle, what we do is we multiply a times c. So in my example that I have up here, a is a 3, c is a 10. So 3 times 10 gives me a 30. So what we are going to be looking for are factors of 30. So let's see here, that's going to be 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 6 times 5. So just like what we were doing before, we want our factors of 30, but we want them to be able to give us a negative 11 in the middle. So again, same rules still apply. This is a plus, so that means your signs have to be the same. They're either both plus, both minus. Looking here, this is showing us that they're both going to be a subtraction sign, so they have to both be negatives. So negative 1 minus negative 30, that's not going to give me an 11. Negative 2 minus 15 would give me a negative 17. This would give me a negative 13. So we're going to use 6 and 5. So what we're going to do with that 6 and 5 is I'm now going to rewrite this, splitting that negative 11 into the negative 6x and the negative 5x. Now this just looks exactly like the problems we were just doing. So now you're going to do your factor by grouping. Group the first two, group the last two. GCF would be a 3x and then a minus 5. So x minus 2 times 3x minus 5 is our final answer. So we're going to take that middle term of 11 and we split it apart, making it those two terms by using the factors of your a times your c, and then we factor by grouping. So if we were to end up multiplying our two factors back out, x times 3x would be 3x squared. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. Negative 2 times 3x would give me negative 6x, and then negative 2 times negative 5 is positive 10. Adding your middle term, that's where our 11 comes from. So there's our original trinomial that we started with. So we're going to take that middle term, you're going to split it apart and then do your factor by grouping. So let's take a look at our first example. So again, 2 times 35 gives us a 70. We have a lot of factors of 70. 3 doesn't go into it. 4, no. 5, yes, 5 times 14. 6, no. 7, yes, 7 times 10, and then 8, 9, no. Okay. So there's our factors of 70. So again, we want factors of 70 that are going to be able to give us a 9 in the middle. This time by subtraction. 70 minus 1, nope. 35 minus 2, nope. 14 minus 5, there it is. Because we want a positive 9 in the middle, we're going to use a positive 14x minus 5x minus 35. So again, if I were to combine these, 14 minus 5, that would give us our 9x. So all I'm doing is breaking apart that 9x to get something that's equivalent so that I can do my factor by grouping. So I have a GCF of 2x, GCF of negative 5, so x plus 7 times 2x minus 5. Okay, let's try number 2. So again, we're going to start with 4 times 6 gives me 24. So my factors of 24, and it may still take you a little bit more time to find your factors, but that is okay. So factors of 24, that will subtract to give me a negative 23. There's really only one option there. That's going to be my 1 times 24. So I would want my 24 to be my negative, because negative 24 plus 1, there's our negative 23. And it doesn't matter which one you write first, whether you write the negative 24x first or the positive 1x, you're still going to end up in the same place in the end. So GCF of 4x, GCF of 1. My parentheses match, so that means we've been doing it correctly. There we go. X minus 6 times 4x plus 1. Okay, next one. So 3 times 6 equals 18. So factors of 18. 3 times 6. So factors of 18 that are going to subtract to give us a negative 3. Nada, nada, yepperoonie dooney. I would want to make this a negative 6 to get me that negative 3 in the middle. And again, that 3x and that negative 6x, it does not matter where they go as long as they are there. You're going to get the same answer no matter which order you put that in. So GCF of 3x, GCF of negative 6. My parentheses match. And there we go. All right, let's try the next one. So again, a times c gives me 56. That's 1 times 56. 2 times 28. 3 doesn't go into it. 4 does. 4 times 13. 5 doesn't. 6 doesn't. 7 times 8. There we go. So there's our factors of 56. We want 2 that are going to add up to give us an 18, which none of those do. So Mrs. Pelkey made a mistake. That should be a 14. 4 times 14. Now we have them right there. 4 times 14, that's going to give me my 18. So 2x squared plus 4x plus 14x plus 28. So we got 2x times x plus 2 plus 14 times x plus 2. So x plus 2 times 2x plus 14. All right, 2 more examples together, and then we're going to have you try some on your own. So this one, 3 times 9 gives me 27. So that's 1 times 27. 3 times 9. None of those are going to give us a 13. And no, Mrs. Pelkey didn't make a mistake this time. This one could give us a 26 or a negative 26 to subtract. This would give us a 6 or a negative 6. Either way, we're not getting a 13. This one is prime. It cannot be factored. Remember, that's what prime means. All right. Last one, 15 times 2 is 30, so factors of 30. 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and then 5 times 6. So we want to get a 7 in the middle, so I'm going to use 3 and 10. That one's going to get me a 7. 5 and 6 won't give me a 7. 2 and 15, not 7. 1 and 30, not 7. I want it to be a negative 7, so I'm going to make it a negative 10x. And then we do our factor by grouping. Group the first two, group the last two. So it's going to be 5x, and then 3x minus 2. No GCF, so it's just going to be a 1. So 3x minus 2 times 5x plus 1. All right, go try the last ones on your own. It's okay if it takes a little while. You'll get the practice and the hang of it with the process if you keep doing it over and over and over again. Then check with me to see how you're doing.